Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Today we're speaking with JP Marsh. JP is a health and co-parenting coach. He's going to tell us all about what he does and how he does it. So take it away, JP.
Thank you for having me. I'm a coach. I help people deal and cope with the struggles of co-parenting and working on or mending sort of a broken relationship with your ex to get to a place to where you can be more than civil and be a united front raising your children. I mean, more or less, every situation is different. All people are different, who's right, who's wrong. It's just a lot of trauma sometimes, baggage, blame, depression, anxiety, spite that, goes into it sometimes. And sometimes, one person picks at the other more, or everybody's a little bit different and every situation's a little bit different, but getting advice and having somebody sort of that's objectively looking at situations that's been through the same sort of situation makes it a little bit easier to see the other side or find the compromises or bend where you should and let things go that are not important. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. A lot of the issues stem around bitterness and spite and unresolved feelings or anger or whatever may be. Whereas your family members, your friends may not always be the best advice givers because they're not going to be very objective. It's hard to expect them to be impartial.
And it usually ends up your friends divide up between the two of you. Mm-hmm. So it's like Hatfields and McCoys because you're
the ones that go that way are pro them. You're not the best person. Your friends it's all their fault. And then when you get that in your ear all the time that, oh, I would have reacted the same way, or yeah, it's their fault, or they're not doing a good enough job, then the more you hear something, the more you believe it, and whether it's true or not. And
how did you get started in this?
About 6.5 years ago, me and my daughter's mom split up. And we weren't married, and my daughter had just turned 2. And when we split up, a week later, I blew the transmission in my pickup. And then a week and a half after that, my dad died suddenly. And obviously I left my ex and was staying at my parents' house because, I just broke up
Two
with
households are really expensive.
yeah. And it was all, it was all kind of up in the air. It could went either way, and all these different variables were involved. And then all these things sort of all happened at once. And I went into a bit of a depression for a while. All I did was, it was hard because I couldn't get away from the grieving process. I mean, the grief I had when my dad died wasn't as I deal with grief. It was fast. People die. It's part of life, is the way I look at it. But I was at my mom's house, and so I was having to watch her deal with all the grief too. Which then all I did was take care of my daughter, go to work, and that was basically it. And I kind of was in a depression for a couple of years, and then started realizing that I was in that space and needed to change. And so then I started reading a lot of books on trauma and depression, because I had a lot of unresolved things from my childhood that I hadn't processed or hadn't done anything with also. And so then I worked on myself and quit watching TV, started just having a life again. And 2 years ago, I think just around 2 years ago, I moved from Oregon to Montana, which, fresh start, but at the same time, it kind of just snowballed from there. Because I mean, I had mentors and people helping me coaching wise over the last, 5 years too. So
Did you get custody? Do you have full custody of your daughter, or are you sharing custody?
There is no custody. In a legal sense, we don't have anything. There's no court orders, and there's no she has to be with you or there or anything like that. At first it was rocky when we'd split up, just like any relationship that ends and that kind of stuff. But over the last, 5 years, 6 years now, I mean, we've been able to figure it out on our own. And so when she was younger, we kind of did 2 days on, 2 days off, back and forth, so that she wasn't going a long time without seeing either or. And now that she's a little bit older, I mean, there's certain days and weekends that we sort of have planned, but nothing's. If I'm supposed to have her on a weekend and I don't have anything planned with her, but she wants to go with her mom, like, it's no big deal. But if she calls me up any day of the week and wants to come stay with me, it's no big deal, as long as,
So your partner moved to Oregon with you. Your ex.
Yeah, we live about 6 blocks away from each other.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then most of the schedule that we have it coincides with my ex is in a blended family relationship now. And so our schedule kind of coincides with when he has his son. So that way, when they have the kids, they have them both at the same time. And then when they don't have kids, then they don't have the kids.
Have a life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that looks great.
And so it just works. And that's really the only kind of schedule that we have, But other than that, last Friday, I took her to the western side of Montana and met up with her grandparents, my ex's parents. And they picked her up and then took her to Oregon. So she's in Oregon for 2 or 3 weeks visiting family and everybody over there. And then she'll come back and get ready for the school year to start, which, is just, if they got a camping trip planned or something, like, it's never a deal where it's like, well, it's my weekend, then I'll just
That is
spend
so
one week or-
awesome.
Yeah.
I
And it's easier.
I divorced my first husband. My kids were they were getting to be teenagers. They were like 9 and 12. And I moved out of the house and he stayed in the house and kept the kids. But I was just like a half a mile down the street. So there was a lot of being able to come back and forth. And the breakup wasn't real amicable because, you're breaking up. And I get the whole, it's like a death. A part of you does die when you have that in the relationship. But we did recognize we didn't have any court orders. I did whatever I could to keep everything out of the courts, because I think the courts just complicate things. And then there's the money pressure when you start hiring attorneys. And, the whole idea that these kids are part of you both. And when you start bashing on each other, that kid is just like, they're not going to take sides.
No.
Or if they do, then a part of them is like, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. So I really admire what you've done, and you're helping other people get through this process in a similar way to what you did. Is that
pretty much? It gets a little more. It gets more complicated when you do have the divorce stuff, because then there's obvious court involvement with visitation and who is considered to be the one that has custody. And typically when you get court papers saying that one has custody, which basically just means that the child lives with them 1 day over 6 months of the year, and that's their address, you know what I mean? That person tends to use that as like a power move. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm the one that has custody and what I say goes, and you need to either be okay with my decision or not, because it doesn't matter. When it doesn't give you any more parental rights than the other person, unless it's something where it's, if you're on a supervised visitation or a strict visitation, I mean, there's other variables, but when you start adding in some of those things, and people get a sense of, it gives people a sense of control that maybe they don't want to give up sometimes, stuff like that. And then the needling and the picking, me and my ex did our fair share of that. And
if you can get past it, you can actually have a really great relationship with an ex. I have a good relationship with my ex, and it's been like almost 30 years now. My current husband and I have 3 other kids, and we go to California, and it's just like,
Well, I mean, we do stuff together with the holidays and barbecues and stuff. I mean, here where we live now, there's a small group of people from the same place that we're from. And so we all kind of do things together. Holidays and the dance recitals, me and my ex will sit together, and the school plays and sporting events and stuff, and her boyfriend's there too, and his son some of the times, and it's not a weird situation, and it's not a weird deal. And I talk to her parents quite a bit, setting up when I'm going to drop my daughter off or they're going to pick her up, because they live in Oregon, so that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of the problems that we had before we got to a place like this was I help people not make and do the things that I was doing. and to be able to get out of doing the things that I was doing faster than I probably got it, faster
Yeah.
than I did. Because, you're connected to that person for the rest of your life. Hopefully, I mean, outside of a tragedy, but you're still going to be connected to that person in grief, even if there's a tragedy. You need to grieve the relationship, because you're right. It is just like somebody died. You lost somebody, and there's a grieving process. But at some point, you got to let it go and step away from your own pity party and get out of your own resentment and feel sorry for me, or I hate you because feel sorry for me, or it didn't work out, or
you can be the victim, or you can be the hero in your own journey, and this is just a low point.
You can either live in misery, or you can move on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with any relationship or any, and then
but when you have kids involved, it just it makes it, you're connected. That's,
and you can't, once you get out of that place of feeling sorry for yourself and blame, quit doing the blame game and quit poking, you know what I mean? Because you obviously know what's going to make that other person mad all the time, because you probably were doing it all the time before you split up.
Probably why you split up.
Yeah, once you quit doing that stuff, it gets really easy. But if you're going to needle somebody all the time, or pick little fights, or nitpick everything that they do, or try to overstep and be involved in things that really are none of your business. But you got to have boundaries, and you got to stick to the boundaries, and you can't double standard all of your boundaries compared to their boundaries. Mm-hmm. If they don't have the right to know who you're dating, you don't have the right to know who they're dating. Facebook stalking and doing all that stuff, it's not okay on either side. But if you can communicate, it makes things really easy. Me and my ex made a deal very early on that if I started dating somebody, or if she started dating somebody and they were going to potentially be around our daughter, I had the option, and she gets the option to meet them first. Because it doesn't, I mean, not that I would have a whole bunch of different people that I'm dating or whatever trample through my daughter's life, but we had that deal, you know what I mean? So it just worked. It put a level of accountability that, a lot of people need.
It also puts that other person that's coming into your life on notice that you are a united front. The child has two parents who are actively involved in that life. And your job is not to come in and be a parent. Your job is to come in and be my partner.
Right.
I'll do the parenting with the other parent.
And in any, communication is key for everything, whether it's professionally, romantically, with your kids, with your ex. I mean, it doesn't really, in all areas of life, if you can't communicate very well, you're not going to be able to really get your point across or have good outcomes in a lot of scenarios. But I'm up front with people, and I'm up front with my ex, and she's up front with me. And one of the things one scenario, and this happens to a lot of people that I work with, in a lot of situations, where day-to-day adulting is not my strong suit, is not easy for me. I have to actively really concentrate to day-to-day adult in a lot of areas of my life. Sometimes I'm a little chaotic schedule-wise. I do construction. I'm a carpenter, and I travel within a 100-mile radius, and so sometimes I get home at 4 o'clock, and sometimes I get home at 7:30. It depends on how far I got to go and how far I got to get back. And it was the same way when I was living in Oregon. It's just a small town area, so you go a lot farther distance. And so my ex would text or call to see what time I was going to be home. And when I quit getting so defensive and then getting mad and defensive and then picking a fight, or it turned into a fight, when, now she'll remind me a bunch of times on things, not because she's picking at me, but because she understands that I'm not, I may not even know what day of the month it is. And so if she doesn't remind me a couple times, then I may forget, or I'll be rushing at the very last second. And so when I quit getting defensive, like she was picking at me or trying to belittle me, then it became easy, because I had to look in the mirror and realize that I'm just not the best at it. They do a lot of stuff in the summer times, and she'll remind me and tell me like 3 or 4 different times, we're going camping this weekend. My parents are coming and they're going to take her back, for a week this week, a couple months in advance, and then, a month in advance, and then a couple weeks in advance. And so
the last 4 days before the day.
Yeah. And, and if they go on an impromptu camping trip or something like that, it's no big deal. I mean, I'm flexible and she's flexible, which is very helpful, because, hopefully I'll be around a long time and she'll be around a long time. Her grandparents want her to go to Oregon for 2 or 3 weeks in the summertime. Like, go. They're not going to be hopefully, they're not going to be around as long as I'm going to be around. So spend as much time as you can with them. Go.
Interesting how family dynamics have changed over the years, and blended families and extended families, and people just working it out. And you have relationships with your ex's parents, and it's not like, just suddenly you're this horrible person and you're just going to be cut out of the family album. It's not like that anymore. And it was like that for a long time, when divorce first started being a thing. And it was probably back in like the 70s, I think, when people started realizing that, we don't have to stay in a relationship that's really sucky, because the Civil Rights Act, and most women don't even know this or realize this, that are in their 30s and 40s and younger, that women didn't used to have really any ability to earn a living.
Right.
And it was touchy to get like a bank account, and you couldn't get loans or credit cards or any kind of ability to have control of your finances. And that's only changed in the last 40 or 50 years. Yeah. And now marriage used to be this, everybody had to get married. Well, you had to get married because you needed somebody to, take care of these issues that you weren't allowed to do. We were second-class citizens.
Unless you were pigeonholing cash in a coffee can, that was about your only access to money.
They talk about egg money. That was, you'd sell your eggs. You kept the chickens and you'd sell the eggs. And that was, your pin money, the little bit of money that you had. But as a woman, it was really, and if you had kids out of wedlock, God forbid, because you were labeled a whore, and then that was it.
Yeah.
You had no other options for your life. But now women have so many opportunities, and men too, not having to be saddled with somebody that is driving you crazy just because she's not going to have any other options either. And I think, the whole marriage thing is, in some ways it's good, in some ways it's bad. But if you're two responsible adults,
Right.
and you're willing to take on the fact that, yeah, we had these kids and everybody in the family is responsible for them. I have a son
Right.
who has a son, and he has another on the way, and he's not married to his partner. And when she got pregnant, it was just like, honey, no matter what happens between the two of you, we will always be here for you. I love her parents. I know her parents really well, and I admire them. And, we all do things together that it's like, it's not, I think eventually they will get married. I know he gave her a ring. There's a ring and a promise, but then she got pregnant, so they have to wait a year.
Well, I mean, like I came from my parents were married my whole life. I think they'd split up a little for 6 months or something when I was like 15. And then my ex's parents have been married her whole life. They had both been previously married, but so she had a little bit more experience with blended families. She has a half brother, half sister that are, 10 years older than her or whatever. And the dealing with the other parents and kind of saw some of that growing up. I didn't. My grandparents, my mom's parents, were a blended family. They had both got divorced, mom and her brothers, and then my grandpa had 2 daughters. And so mom kind of grew up with that kind of stuff. But marriage, and even, I think a lot of people have a relationship that may not be in the best place and think a kid's going to fix it. And then, or feel like this hole that may be inside of them, a kid is going to fix it. Where I'm in a bit of a different angle, because like I love my daughter and I'm an active parent and I'm very involved in all of that stuff. But at no point in my life did I ever feel like I needed to have children to be complete, or that if I didn't have children, I would be a failure or I wouldn't be an adult or anything like that. Like, having a child is great and I love it, but it wasn't something that I grew up, I'm going to be a dad by 22 and I'm going to be married at 25 or married at 20 and, or anything like that. But those weren't the pressures that were put on us, or the societal pressures from society or the parental pressures from my parents or anything like that. It was live your life the way you want to live your life. And as long as you're happy, we're happy for you. And so I didn't have, I was 33 when I had my daughter. And, when I go to her dance recitals, school events, and pretty much anything else, I'm about 12 years older than every other parent, because I didn't have a daughter when I was 19, 20 years old.
I had my last kid, I was 44.
Right. And
I was like 25 years old.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, like, even, I have a partner, a girlfriend, and we met last summer, something like that. We've been dating for a year or so. She's busy. I'm busy. When she has 2 boys that are teenagers, middle school age, and communication is obviously key, but like, she was in a 20-year marriage that that ended. You know, it was the only person that she'd been with since she got out of high school. And it was a couple years before I met her that they got divorced and all that stuff. But you're talking about a woman who's never really dated, or, you know, she's known one relationship for her entire half of her life, you know.
Mhm.
And so it's a slow progressing deal, but having the open communication and having the, you know, these things and those things. Like, she hasn't met my daughter yet. I've met her boys once by accident, you know, ran into her at the fair, that kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it works for me and it works for her, because she needs to go slow, which is fine. And I really protect my solitude and my independence. And so if it was a case of something where it was, you know, 0 to 100, I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want to, you know. And so you know, but it's progressing in that sort of way. And she brought it up to me. It was like, well, do you have any plans on ever being married? And I was, no. You know, like, I mean, I don't, it's not something that I need to feel complete. You know what I mean? I mean, but
can I ask
I've
you-
always thought of marriage in a weird way. Like, I've always been open and willing, a willing and open participant in the idea of marriage, in the aspect of get your closest family and friends together and have a ceremony and promise a commitment to the person that you love. Do I think I need to go ask the courts for their permission to get a marriage license to marry the person that I love? No. You know what I mean? And at this day and age, you don't need that piece of paper to get all the aspects of marriage outside of medical decisions and a couple actual things that you may have to.
But you can protect that legally with
in other
documents.
legal ways, you know, medical decisions. But, you know, 20 years ago, you couldn't have your insurance shared if you weren't married. Now you don't need to be married. You know,
Yeah,
there's just, I mean, there's not a lot of hook and line left to force you to get pieces of paper from courts and stuff like that. But
right.
you know, I've never really felt like I needed that piece of paper to feel complete. And it throws a lot of complications into the mix, just like getting the courts involved in your custody and getting these
Absolutely.
things.
So let me ask you this. How do people get to work with you? Do you work with them over Zoom? Do you work with them? How do they get in contact with you?
One-on-one coaching is what I do currently.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other, I like to connect with people and one-on-one interact with people, because nobody, you know, it's not cut and dry. No two
Mm-hmm.
people are the same.
Right.
And so I do one-on-one coaching, and that's pretty much it, you know.
Did you have a website or something that they can reach you through?
Mostly just Instagram and Facebook, but to connect with me, you know, yeah, Instagram, Facebook, but social media is not my favorite. You know, I tend to get Instagram, I do a lot in Facebook groups and generate authority and interest and talk to people and connect with people. Instagram really is hard for me to get to where I can spend more than 5 or 10 minutes on it a day. It's hard to not look at everybody like they're sleazy, salesy, and inauthentic, because, you know, I mean, I could spend a lot of time posting quotes and doing a bunch of stuff on there, but it's just not something that I'm interested in putting effort into. You know what I mean? But I mean, message wise, you know, on Instagram or Facebook, and then it just kind of connect and that kind of deal.
Okay. I'll make sure that we put those links in the description. Is there one thing you want to leave our audience with?
Well, most of my energy and brain power is spent just trying to be a little bit better than I was the day before. And empathy usually is probably the best thing that you could try to have, because you know how you feel, but you don't know where they're coming from. And without understanding that, your reaction is usually going to be wrong. And everybody's just doing the best they can with the tools that they got.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that is true. Thanks so much for joining us today, JP. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the U World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the U World Order, or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.